Hello! I got the first novel done, so, man, this is crazy. So, is this supposed to be answer arcs? Jeez, so I guess we're gonna get some kind of explanation for everything that I read. Crazy. That was just insane. I don't even have the words. Okay. Episode 5. End of the Golden Witch. Good morning. Please enjoy this new game by a new game master at your leisure. However, the game has already reached a climax. The culprit has been cornered, and there's nothing left to do but await the final checkmate. But for that very reason, there must be something for you to spot looking down on it from afar. The difficulty is fairly easy. What could possibly deceive you after all this time? I need to check things. Hope I can record all of this right. Jeez, man.
決まっておろうが殺したらそなたが歪めるだろうその表情が楽しいからの他に何の理由が必要なのかほらほら目をつむらずにちゃんと見ろよほらほらほらほら魔法だよ家具だよそなたがどんなにわらわや魔法の存在を否定しようともほらほらほらほらほらほら悪いなバトラー結構面白かったぜしかしお師匠様の言う通りにしてみたんだが本当に結構いいとこまで行けたな何でもツンツンと残虐を尽くした後に程よくへたれて出れてみせると好感度ってやつが大幅アップするんだろ
Got it. That lonely tone was the desolate sound of the wind blowing by. The glittering rose petals on these bushes were all golden. The cloud of gold butterflies that had once danced through this golden rose garden like fluttering rose petals was no longer anywhere to be seen. The master of the Golden Land is the Golden Witch, Beatrice. She might be called inhumane and cruel, arrogant and outrageous, or perhaps naive and simple. That laugh of hers, which lost its grace more and more the longer it continued, could no longer be heard. The Golden Witch Beatrice sat like a doll, resting in a decked chair adorned as beautifully as the golden rose garden itself. She wasn't relaxing there. Her eyes were empty. She didn't respond to any questions. Even so, she was not permitted to sleep. Beatrice sat like a doll. Her hair was down, and Virgilia was carefully tending to it with a comb. The usual Beto would surely have spent his time complaining about this and that regarding her hairstyle. However, she made no response, showed no reaction. So it really only looked like Virgilia was combing the golden hair of a large doll. There was a table alongside them. On it sat a chessboard, along with a jumble of black and white pieces blocked in a closely fought battle. However, this setup looked somehow different from normal chess. Maybe the game was similar, though not identical. And on the other side, sitting back in his chair as he contemplated his next move, was a young man. No, perhaps it wasn't his next move he contemplated. Every once in a while, he would change the positions of the pieces, reconsidering the situation after every change. Maybe he was reconstructing previous games, trying to discover the thought process behind the moves that had been made. In the past, Kinzo, the Shiromiya family head, once said that learning chessboard arrangements was like taking a journey through the thoughts of the old masters. Shiromiya Battler was on a journey, a search for the thought process that had led the Golden Witch to create this arrangement and make these moves. Battler took a black piece that should have been moved forward and returned it to its original place, sighing deeply. Battler's pieces were white. However, on this chessboard, the black encampment was on Battler's side. He was reconstructing that arrangement, trying to play Bito's rule.
お前の指し手は、やればやるほどに理解できねえぜ。
Even Battler didn't expect that Bito would respond to that statement. Or rather, he was pretending to talk to himself, thinking there might still be some chance of her responding. Oh. At least she let her hair down. Bito's eyes reflected nothing, and her mouth told nothing. After begging him to kill her, the Golden Witch had become a corpse that had given up on life. She wasn't sleeping. She couldn't step down from this game and was therefore forbidden sleep. So, those words must have reached her ears. However, they probably hadn't reached her heart. The Golden Witch would not sneer at Battler's moves, nor would she praise them or belittle them. By now, Beatrice was nothing more than a living doll. Even so, she would glance at him every once in a while. It would be an empty glance, but a glance nonetheless. Sometimes she would seem to make some sort of gesture, or even move her lips. However, her movements never managed to communicate anything to Battler.
どうやったらこの局面でこの指し手になるわけだ。わけがわからねえんだよ。お前の指し手はよ。
ベアとバトラ君が話しかけていますよ。
なんとか言えよ。クスクスとかゲラゲラとか。いつもの黄色い笑いでいいから。
Can you believe it? That shrill laugh of Bito's will never be heard again. However, even if she couldn't answer, his voice surely reached her. That was what Battler believed as he said these words. So he said it again.
どうやったらこの局面でこの指し手になるわけだ。わけがわからねえぜ。お前の指し手はよ。
この子の考えることはわけがわかりませんか？
Virgilia answered in her disciple's stead. Up to this point, she had done her best to avoid speaking for Bito. After all, there was a chance that Bito would respond in some way, and Virgilia didn't want to be the one to steal that chance. So, Battler was going to have to bear with his silence, until Bito herself answered. Virgilia could no longer bear to watch Battler like this. Besides, Battler also wanted to hear what Virgilia had to say. He believed that conversation would reach Bito's heart.
ああ、さっぱりだな。ベアとの立場になって、こうして駒を動かせば動かすほどにわからなくなる。
A serial murder following an epitaph. With that as a victory condition, I tried reconstructing the games from the witch's side, but I never ended up making the moves Bito did. In those games, I could find several incomprehensible moves that clearly worked against that victory condition.
さっぱりわからねえ。こいつの思考を探る旅路はあまりに険しすぎるぜ。
でもあなたは投げ出さないのですね。
ああ、約束した。
Kill me. Let me die.
俺はこいつを安らかに死なせてやると約束した。そしてそれは俺にしかできない。
Bito's right ankle was bound with a heavy cold steel shackle. It wasn't tied to anything, so it didn't restrict her movement. However, it symbolized restriction. It was a visualization of the bonds that prevented her from leaving the game until she either won or lost. And the shackle was probably hurting her. The mercilessly cold shackle tormented her over and over inside her waking dream. So, there was never any sign of relief in her empty expression. Her eyelids would sometimes tremble like she was having a nightmare, and every once in a while she would let out a pained gasp. I don't know. Pained. I don't know why I added a T in that word. Unless I win. Bito will never be released from the curse that prevents her from sleeping peacefully.
良いのですか。第5のゲームはもう始まっているようですよ。
See. Why should I take part in any game unless Bito is my opponent? If that's the only alternative, then it's a much better use of my time to reconstruct previous games while taking a journey in search of Bito's thought process.
次のゲームマスターは私がやるわ。依存ある？ないわよね。
Okay.
依存だらけよ。
Okay.
ベアとは戦いを放棄して人事不正。ベアとの不戦敗でゲームオーバーでしょ。
確かにベアとはいろいろとあったんで、今はちょっぴりノックアウト気味。でも戦う気力を失ったわけじゃない。だからつまり私は介助役ってわけ。わかる
Bito was lying down on a deck chair, almost as though she was sleeping. However, she wasn't sleeping. And she wasn't awake either. She was nothing more than a living doll that had given up on Victor, who had asked Battler to perform her last rites, and who had surrendered everything. Of course, if everyone just sat around, the next game, the 5th game, would never be made ready. So, Lino Delta had succeeded Bito as the next game master and announced that she'd prepare the next game.
ふざけるな。これは俺とベアとのゲームだぞ。お前らどこの誰か知らねえが勝手に話を進めるんじゃねえ。
あんたに意見は求めてないわ。どうすんのベル。
Got him.
受けるの？受けないの
Harsh.
いいわ。あんたが引き継ぎなさい。
なんだと。ふざけるな。お前ら何者か知らねえが俺とベアとを無視して勝手に話を進めるんじゃね
落ち着きなさいよ。確かにプレイヤーが変われば指し手も変わる。あんたにとっては戸惑うことも多いかもしれないけど、それでも大きなヒントになりうるでしょ。
知らねえよ。勝手なこと言って仕切ってんじゃねえ。
ベアとのゲームを4つも繰り返して何もわからないんでしょ。ならプレイヤーが変わるのは大きなヒントになると思うけれど。
大きなお世話だ。これはベアトが用意し俺を対戦相手に指定した俺たちのゲームだ。どこから湧いてきたのかもしれないお前らにかき回されるのはごめんだ。
ならベアトを起こして次の準備をさせて。できる？
ベアトはしばらく起きねえよ。それに新しいゲームなんて必要ねえ。あいつがこれまでに出題してきた4つのゲームの譜面だけで十分だ。仮に第5のゲームがあるとしてもそれはベアトが出題し俺に挑むものだけで十分だ。お前らには何の関係もない。
Battler couldn't hide his irritation at the 2 witches called Lambda Delta and Burn Castle, who had shown up well after the game's start and who were now trying to take charge on their own. It looked like these witches were of an even higher rank than Bito. So high, in fact, that even Bito's teacher, Virgilia, couldn't even come close. Battler had the feeling he'd seen these 2 several times before. However, this was the first time he'd known their names and spoken to them directly.
ベアトを起こせず、あんたに次のゲームを準備もできない。だから私が次のゲームを用意するわけ。 私たちはね、いつ正気を取り戻すかもわからないベアとにいつまでも付き合ってられるほど気が長くないのね、ベルン。
退屈はごめんなの。イライラするほどに。
お前が退屈がろうが俺たちは知ったことじゃねえ。
まあまあ、このパーフェクトなラムダデルタ様に任せなさい。私がゲームマスターを引き継ぐ。大丈夫よ。あんまり絶対完璧にはプレイしないわよ。ベアトっぽくわけのわかんないフェイクや尻尾、ボーナスヒントをいっぱい用意してあげる。ベアトの世界をより理解するための大きなヒントにしてあげるわよ。
Letting my voiceless emotions explode, I slammed the table hard. The two witches didn't flinch at all. One grinned. The other looked indifferent, as though nothing had happened. The two of them just stared at me silently, as though they were reproaching me.
何？不満？あんたは私による第5のゲームを降りるっての？それって不先輩？
Man.
バトラは降りないわよ。もちろん第5のゲームにも参加するわ。
This is awful.
勝手に決めるんじゃねえ。お前らに俺は付き合わない。知ったことじゃない。
All of everything happening is driving Badwar crazy. I want to see answers as much as he does.
このゲームは魔女側の勝ち。人間は屈服ってことでお開きでいいかしら。
降りるなら不先輩でゲーム終了だけどいいの？たった一人残された妹が無限の世界のすべてでたどる不幸な境遇を確定させたいのならそれも選択よ。
When Burncastle mentioned Angie, Badwar's expression changed instantly.
てめえエンジェのことを気安く口にするんじゃねえ。
あなたにこの私奇跡の魔女ベルンカステルが味方しているからこそエンジェにはひょっとしたら家族が帰ってくるかもしれない奇跡の余地が残されてるのよ。あなたが自らそれを捨ててエンジェの無限の未来全てを不幸なものに確定するのもまた私には一興だけれども。
I vaguely understood what she was saying. Until I win Bito's game, I'll remain trapped in this bizarre world. And if I abandon that victory, then most certainly my parents and I will never return to Angie. For Angie's sake, even though I know that the witches are toying with me, I must keep on fighting.
くそ。
なーにその不満そうな顔。自分の妹をグズグズのひき肉にされた怒りもう忘れちゃったの？プチプチブチブチ無数の焼けたペンチで引きちぎって細切れにしていくあの光景今度はちゃんと真正面で見ないとダメ
Burncastle pointed the palm of her right hand upwards. As she did, a pale light gathered there, and some kind of blue glowing crystal appeared there. A scene was reflected on its sharp surface, but it wasn't the scene that surrounded them now. If you look deep into that crystal, that fragment, then you would probably learn that what was reflected on there. If you stared at it, then you'd surely see the end Angie finally reached, after waiting 12 years and giving up everything for the sake of her beloved brother. The scene of her death throes, as her entire body was torn to bits while she still lived. Oh. Without thinking, he grabbed at her collar, but as soon as he touched that which made upper form, it disappeared like foam on the waves. Then, as naturally as though she'd been there from the beginning, Berncastle was leaning against a distant wall.
あなたがゲームを降りるなら、これはかけらでなく
I can't
確
take
定した
this.
現実になる。その未来を紡ぐのは私じゃないわ。あなた自身よ。あなたが決めなさい。最愛の妹の未来を。
Pretty sweet story though. It's really good. Badwar's fist shook with anger, but even if he swung them down, he wouldn't be able to hit Berncastle. This witch was like a phantom, or a cat who wouldn't even let someone pet her if she didn't wish for it. And she was telling the truth. For Angie's sake, I can't step down from this fight, even if these unpleasant witches hijack the game board.
さすがベルン。脅し方もえぐいわね。そういうことよ、バトラー。あんたにはゲームを降りることなんて許されてないの。あんたもベアとも私たちの退屈を紛らわせるゲーム版の駒でしかない。あんたのそのわけのわかんない怒りやイラつきさえも私たちには退屈を紛らわす最高のお菓子。まあその程度の怒りじゃ駄菓子程度だけどね。
30円で2枚入ってるカレー味のポテトせんべい程度ね。
魔女ともね
え。エンジェのためにも戦いなさい。そしてベアとのためにもでしょ。
In a way that was admonishing, or perhaps babying, like the headache you get after eating something too sweet. Berncastle tormented Battler and smiled. By now, the host of this tea party, Beto, was absent. The guest witches were already making themselves at home.
どうすんの？後ろ宮バトラー。運命に屈しちゃう？降りちゃいなさいよ。魔女の駒にして遊ばれるなんてもうごめんなんでしょ？ベルンの駒は辛いわよ。きっとあんたもエンジェみたいに使い捨てにされるわよ。
あなたに降りる選択肢は与えてない。妹の未来のために戦い続けるの。私は味方よ。その未来にたどり着けるようあなたが勝利するまでサポートするわ。私が退屈するまで永遠に。
I can't let her provocation and casuality, now I do not know what that word is, rile me up. These witches know I get mad easily, and they're trying to take advantage of that. Battler withstood it all, and finally relaxed his clenched fist.
第5のゲームとやらが始めたいなら勝手にやればいい。好きにしろ。
好きにするわよ。あれれ、どこ行くのよ。
Even though Battler acknowledged his fifth game, he turned his back on them, much to Lana Delta's surprise.
お前がベアとの代役を務めるってんならそこのベルンカステルとかいう魔女が俺の代役を務めるのも勝手だろ。
道理ね。そうじゃないと不先輩になってしまう。
何よそれ。私が作る渾身のエピソード5をあんた無視するっての？失礼しちゃう失礼しちゃう。
バトラーはしばらく休憩するそうよ。それまでの間私がプレイヤーの代役を務める。それでどうバトラー。
そうしやがれ。
なにラムダ、間抜けなバトラじゃなくて私がプレイヤーだと遊んでくれないの？
そんなわけないわ。ベルンと一緒に遊べて嬉しいわよ。さあさあ、遊びましょう遊びましょう。ラムダデルタ様の超ハイパーでキュートに可愛いエピソード5を一緒に遊びましょうよ。
一応ベアトの作った世界なのよ。世界観ぶち壊しにしてないでしょうね。
大丈夫だってば。私そういうのの空気は読める方なのよ。ちゃんとベアトっぽい世界観でもっと面白い物語に仕上げてみせたわ。バトラも休憩終わったら早く戻ってくるのよ。見逃すともったいないわよ。ベアトの秘密に迫れるようなボーナスヒントをたっぷり用意してるんだから。と見せかけてミスリード満載でますますに煙に巻く気なんだけどね。ちょっとこらバトラ、魔女の話聞いてんの？
Without answering, Bador disappeared into the darkness. After shrugging and cackling, the witches immediately started playing with the game board they had stolen from Bito.
あの魔女どもにベアとのゲームは理解できるのか？
同じゲーム版を使う以上、この子にできないことはできません。しかしこの子がやらないことはやれます。
やらないこととは何だ？
チェスの道具はチェスで遊ぶために存在します。それを使ってトランプをすることはできない。しかしチェスの駒を相手に投げつけてぶつけたり、チェス盤に落書きしてみたり、そういう行為をすることも不可能ではありません。しかしそれはチェスに対する冒涜だから誰もやらない。
That definitely wouldn't be chess anymore. Bito's eyes seemed to cloud slightly with sadness.
ふざけやがって。これは俺とベアとのゲームだ。他の誰にも冒涜はさせない。
At that time, gold butterflies gathered and Renovi appeared, holding a tea set with black tea.
紅茶のおかわりはいかがですか？
もらえるか？
かしこまりました。いかがですか？お嬢様の思考を探る旅は。
さっぱりだが楽しんでるぜ。
しかしよろしいのですか？こちらでくつろがれていても。
あの魔女どもが勝手に進めてるゲームのことか？
ええ、先ほど紅茶をお届けに伺った時にはもう第一の番の殺人が起こり、もうじきその次の殺人も起こりそうな気配でした。
When Bito and I were playing, the game would be paused whenever someone left their seats. However, those witches wouldn't pause that game just because I wasn't around.
ロノウェは奴らのゲームを見たのか？
一部ではございますが。
どうだった？
Renovi lifted the pot high with an elegant gesture as he poured the black tea. After finishing that, he finally spoke. He gave us his impressions of it.
愛がありませんな。
愛ってなんだ？
これは失礼。女性風に申し上げるとです。男性風に申し上げるならば、義理が通らぬと申しましょうか。
I understood what those words meant. When I met Virgilia's eyes, she shook her head slightly and stared at the floor.
上辺は 大変よくお嬢様のゲームに似せていると思います。しかし根本が大きく異なっています。
それはベアとのゲームのルールに反することなのか？
いいえ、反しません。ラムダデルタ様はお嬢様のゲームのルールを実によく理解なされております。しかし
Bador stood up. There was no need to make Renove say any more.
バトラク、
ロノウェ、すまない。せっかく入れてもらったけど紅茶はいらねえぜ。
やはり参られますか？
ああ、俺たちのゲームに部外者はいらない。
These guys weren't even here in the beginning. Because I've been wolfing about, crazier and crazier witches have been introduced, and now they've hijacked this game between me and Beatrice.
取り返さねえとな。ベアとのゲーム版は今は俺が扱ってるはずなんだ。その俺がここでぼんやりしてるわけにはいかない。
ありがとう。その言葉をこの子に聞かせてやりたかった。
きっと聞こえてい
He
ま
has
す。
been through 4 games of this. What does he even do?
それを実践ができないだけです。
Bito lay there silently, like a living doll with dull eyes. The game board she had created herself had been hijacked by incomprehensible people, and was being turned into a mess. If I was designated to be her opponent, then Bito must have created this game for me. I've got to take it back.
待ってろ。俺が取り返してくる。
Of course, Bito didn't respond in any way. That's right. If she can't respond, then I have to protect it in her place.
行ってくるぜ。ワルギリア、ロノエ、黄金の眠り姫の面倒を頼むぜ。
はい、お任せ。
いってらっしゃい、バトラク。そしてどうかこの子のいないゲームにてこの子の何かを見つけてあげてください。もしそれを見つけることができたなら、たとえこの子が不在であってもあなたはこの子と戦ってくれたことになる。
そうだよな。ああ、全然ダメだぜ。俺は何をやってるんだ。
Let's go. And let's take it back.
魔女ども、待たせたな。俺の休憩は終わりだぜ。
When he faced the jet black heavens and yelled this, the whole world shattered as though it were made out of thin glass. Then, as though it had been that way since the beginning, it transformed into that smoking room where Bador had fought Bito so many times, in which the 2 witches had now hijacked.
なーにあんた、今頃戻ってきたの？超遅すぎ。もうゲームは2日目どころか大詰めも大詰めよ。
バトラがいつまでも来ないから私が勝手に進めちゃったわ。
Yeah, like he even waited for me in the first place.
ベルンはあんたよりずーっと頭が冴えてて痛快だったわよね。
うるせえ。プレイヤーは俺だ。代役の魔女どもは引っ込んでろ。
別に今から参加しても構わないけど、もう出番ないわよ多分。
確かに。だってもうクライマックスもクライマックス。これで多分ベルンが詰めたゲームセットだもの。
なんだと。
いいんじゃない。最後の爪くらい見物してよ。
そうね、おいでなさい後ろ宮バトラー。もうほとんどおしまいだけど、私の作ったキュートでエレガントなゲーム、エピソード5 End of the Golden Witch。
Okay, Okay. Okay. This is it. No, now what? So I'm at this screen. What do I do? It took me here. Oh. Okay, that looks interesting. Jeez. Do I have to look at these things? At all? So I get tips. Not. No, I do not. There's nothing. Should I exit? I'll exit. Huh. Was I supposed to do something? Second day. No. Right now, no humans exist on this island except for those in this parlor. And, with one exception, it has been shown that none of them have committed murder. And the culprit is among these people. So, what these are explanations for all 4 of the games. So, if this is 5, maybe because the first game had 4 episodes and this one has 4 episodes. Maybe this is for the first game. So, I think it takes us back to that.
魔女が犯人で魔法で殺人を犯したわけでない限り。
あんたなの？あんたがジョージを、主人を殺したの？どうしてよ？どうして？
私は殺していません。私は何も。
In a panic, and with a voice that was far from calm, in a manner that was, to put it coldly, unsightly, Aunt Ashley denied the suspicion placed upon her. However, there was no longer any way around it. She stood up, brushed back her long hair, pointed at Aunt Ashley, and said it one more time. Oh, okay, she was not here. What? Who is this?
後宮夏日さん。
I do not remember that girl. Sadler has suffered enough. Come on. He can do this. As he knocked loudly and repeatedly, Natsuki yelled. Shortly after, there was a heavy clunking sound, and the sound of the door to Kinzo's study unlocking could be heard. As the door opened, a heavily sweet, venomous odor flowed out. Natsuki was always ashamed of how she automatically grimaced at that, even though she thought it rude to the family head. Cross was waiting for her inside the study. Natsuki flew into his arms. With an uncertain gait, Natsuki walked towards the center of the study, supported by Cross. There, a dignified bed fitting for the Shiramiya family head could be seen, along with Nanjo, Genji, and Kumasawa. After sighing deeply, Nanjo left the side of the bed. On the bed, Kinzo could be seen lying down, asleep. Aww. Kinzo! Sobbing, Natsuki slumped over the chest of that man who had fallen into a sleep from which he would never awaken. Natsuki couldn't stop crying over the death of the man whom she loved like a second father. Kumasawa rubbed Natsuki's back, consoling her. Cross slumped into his late father's favorite chair. By sitting there, he might have been immersed in memories of his departed father. Or perhaps he thought that by sitting there, he might be able to understand just a bit of the madness of Kinzo's later years, which he had never been able to comprehend before. And Nanjo, just as he had when Kinzo once sat in that chair, contemplating a chess move, turned his back and looked down over the outside world through a crack in the curtains. Nanjo understood that as well. Shiramiya Kinzo, who had risen like a comet and glittered like a supernova in the post-war business world, had died. His funeral would probably be of a fantastic scale, and it would also be the ceremony marking Cross's inheritance of the headship. He would have to arrange everything as the host of the event, carry out funeral diplomacy perfectly, and make it clear to all that the Shiramiya family still had enormous influence in the political and financial spheres. As Nanjo watched Cross, he was vividly reminded of the time when Kinzo had been suddenly selected as the Shiramiya family head, when Kinzo had been lost and confused. In this way, he was able to understand Cross's distress and sympathize with it. Natsui's sobs eventually subsided. Watching this and leaving Kumasawa to care for Natsui as a fellow woman, Genji returned to where Cross was, and, as though asking what should be done, Genji lowered his head slightly. Cross, with his hands still over his eyes, didn't respond. Perhaps even though he had known this day would come, Cross really couldn't hide his shock at how suddenly it had reached them. Maybe she heard that, or maybe it was a coincidence. As though responding to Genji's words, Natsui came over. Her eyes were red from crying so much, but she apparently understood the heavy responsibility that had been imposed on them even better than Cross did.
これからはあなたが栄光ある後宮家の当主です。お父様の後を立派に継いだことを内外に示しましょう。この夏日、あなたの妻として棺を並べる日までお仕えする覚悟です。
Trying to encourage her husband, who was overcome with shock, Natsui lent him some reassuring words. When Cross finally lowered the hands that had been covering his face, he looked up at the ceiling with a blank expression and let out a deep, deep sigh.
どうかしっかりお父様の残したものを食い荒らそうと目論む輩が大勢いるのですよ。私たちはお父様の名誉と財産を守るために戦わなければなりません。それが後宮家当主の最初の仕事ですよ。
分かってる。分かっているとも。
南條先生と源氏はお役所や葬儀業者への手配をお願いします。特に源氏、お父様の葬儀にふさわしいものとなるよう特に手配を頼みますよ。
かしこまりました。
それから南條先生、お父様は病院でお亡くなりになったわけではないので、
場合によっては解剖が入るかもしれませんな。
なんとかなりませんか。亡くなったとはいえお父様の大切なお体です。傷をつけるなど耐えられることではありません。
気持ちはわかる。だがそういうところをきっちりすることも大切だ。それにこう言ってはなんだが、難しい親族の方々が多いんじゃないかね。
Who knew how those vultures after the inheritance might try to find fault with them? They might claim to have found some reason to suspect the cause of death, using that as a point of contention to start some trouble. Right now, it was important not only to pay Kinzo's remains the respect they were due, but also to solidify the position of the new family head, Kraus.
わかりました。必要最小限にお願いします。間違ってもお父様の威厳が損なわれるようなお姿にしないように。
それは大丈夫だ。安心しなさい。とにかく金蔵さんのことはわしらに任せて、夏日さんはクラウスさんのそばにいてあげなさい。これからが大変なんだから。
分かっています。あなたもどうかしっかり。
Kraus was still staring blankly at the ceiling with a befuddled expression on his face. She understood the shock and heavy responsibility he bore. Natsui understood her husband's feelings as much as anyone.
親族への連絡は私がします。今だけは休まれてください。
Kraus didn't respond. Natsui, thinking him to be just a bit unreliable at the moment, decided she must offer her support. Seeing her husband like this actually spurred Natsui to action, and a resolute expression rose to her face.
これから忙しくなります。今できることを始めましょう。夫はきっとお父様と二人きりで話したいこともあると思います。私たちは一度ここを退出しましょう。
そうでございますね。その時間はきっと今しか取れないでしょうから。
Being in charge of a funeral is tiring work. There's no time to shed tears. If Kraus were ever to be given time to cry for his dead father, that time would have to be now. Everyone agreed with Kumasawa's words. Even so, Kraus continued to blankly gaze up at the ceiling and didn't respond in any way. Natsui urged the servants to go.
私はジェシカにも話してきます。今やあの子が次期当主です。それにふさわしい自覚を持つようによく言い聞かせなくては。
待て。
As they each started to make their way out of the study, Kraus finally spoke. They stopped walking.
はい。
待て。
はい。
Hadn't she already stopped walking, just like her husband had asked? But despite that, he told her once again to wait. From those slightly weak words, Natsui understood that he'd probably stopped her because he wanted her to be by his side.
お前たちは下へ。私は夫と言います。何かあったらここに電話するように。
かしこまりました。だから待てと言っている。
When Kraus suddenly raised his voice, everyone jumped and turned around. Unable to comprehend what she had done to spark her husband's wrath, Natsui ran up to him.
どうしましたあなた。私は何か失礼なことを口にしてしまいましたか。だったらお許しを。
いや、違う。そうじゃない。そうじゃない。少し待て。時間をくれ。
ええ、分かっています。心を整理するためにも必要です。私たちはその時間をあなたにあげようと、ここから静かに出ていくだけですよ。
だからそれを待てというのだ。いいか、誰もその場から動くな。一歩たりともだ。疲れたなら椅子にでもソファーにでも好きに座ればいい。だから何も喋らずに静かに黙って何もせずにいろ。
Those unreasonable words felt like a glimpse of how Kinzo used to be. Natsui couldn't hide her slight surprise at this behavior, which almost made it seem as though Kinzo had possessed her husband. Natsui told the servants to wait for the time being. She ordered them to sit on a sofa a short distance off, approached her husband, and spoke to him in a small voice.
あなたのお命じになれば、夏日はいくらでも待ちます。とどまります。ですからどうか、お気を鎮められてください。
違う。そうではないのだ。そうではないのだ。
Was it really blood, or was he actually being possessed? Kraus's disorderly style of speech strongly resembled Kinzo's. As she watched this, Natsui became certain that Kraus was Kinzo's son after all, and that he was the true successor, more suitable than any other person.
夏日、こっち。
Kraus stood up and headed towards the window, trying to lengthen the distance between himself and the servants waiting on the sofa by even a small amount. Natsui realized that he must have something secret to discuss.
はい、あなた、何事ですか。
親父に死なれてはまずいのだ。
しかし、もうお亡くなりになりました。そういうわけには参りません。
そうじゃない。今はまずいんだ。
どういうことですか。
親父の財産を担保にしている。相続問題になれば隠しをせない。
担保ですか。いかほど。
メロディーランドの時近藤君を応援したことがあっただろう。
あの方とは縁を切れと申し上げたじゃありませんか。私には断ったと言ったはず。どうして。
男の義理というものがある。断れなかった。
Kraus claimed to hold honor as a virtue. However, Natsui knew that he most often used this as an excuse for when he reluctantly went along with some deal that he just couldn't refuse.
お金に余裕があるならいざ知れず。この島のリゾート計画でかなりの借金をされたのではありませんでしたか。
ああ、したさ。方々で恩人に世話になったのだ。それらを返済するためにも座しているわけにはいかない。返済するためには金がいる。金を生むためには金がいる。金がなければ始まらない。この島の計画だって企画会社がおかしなことにならなければ順調だったのだ。都の役人とも連携は取れていた。東京都の新しい観光スポットになると知事の太鼓判ももらえていた。私の根回しは完璧だったのだ。たまたま巡り合わせとタイミングが悪かった。ちょっとした運のすれ違い、事故みたいなものだった。
あれは事故なんかではありません。詐欺です。あなたは騙されたのです。初めから彼らは この島のリゾート計画など描けていなかったのです。
そんなことはないぞ。土方君のビジョンは先見性にあふれていた。世界と未来に目を向けた広大な視野は、私が夢だと信じていたものなど猫の額ほどの広さしかないことを教えてくれた。夢が広がる、世界に未来に。夏日も一緒に聞いていただろう。
ええ、聞いていました。そしてお帰りになられた後に申し上げたはずです。あの方はうさんくさい。語るのは未来ばかりで地に足がついていない。これ以上お付き合いしてはならないと。
土方君は立派な好青年だ。彼の生き様からは学ぶことも多いぞ。彼は若いが尊敬できる。彼のことを侮辱することは許さんぞ。
あなたは同じことを月旅行の時にもおっしゃいました。先見性がある、未来がある、夢があると連呼され、その挙句はいかがでしたか。荒唐無稽な話だったとあなた自らがお認めになったではありませんか。私はNASA の高官とか名乗るおかしな男が現れた頃から、これは絶対におかしいと確信しておりました。
あれはあの外国人が国際的な詐欺師だったに過ぎない。あの件については私も曽根崎氏も被害者だ。彼の先見性は今をもって間違っていない。将来必ず世界の大富豪が宇宙旅行をたしなむ時代が訪れる。そしてその最初の事業は民間1社によって独占されるだろう。着眼点は間違っていない。それを利用して世界中の投資家を騙している国際的な詐欺集団がいて、
曽根崎という男もその一味だったと申し上げているのです。あなたはどこまでお人よしなのですか。どうしていつもうさんくさい話を疑いもせずに乗ってしまうのですか。
訂正しろ。曽根崎氏は優秀な未来ある男だ。うさんくさくなどない。彼の語る夢は未来を先取りしているからこそ、それが見えるものには妄想にしか見えんだけだ。女のお前には未来など見えん。
ええ、女の私には未来など見えません。でも現在なら見えます。私の目の前で狡猾な二枚舌の詐欺師たちに丸め込まれ、騙されてなお妄信している哀れな夫の姿なら見ることができます。
ねえ、黙れ。お前には金も事業も経済も何もわからん。夫の仕事に口は出すな。妻は家事だけをしてればいい。お前は黙っていろ。
Without another word, Nancy fell silent, just as Cross had hoped she would. She was already far beyond anger and sadness. And the emotion that lay on the other side of those was an almost indifferent pity. Cross, who had been in awe of Kinzo since he was very young, had started to subconsciously admire the way his father lived. Without realizing it, he had come to believe that he could only be recognized as a man in his own right if he surpassed his father. However, Kinzo had been a mad genius, the likes of which had never before been seen in the Shiromiya family's long history. That talent was a gift from heaven, and it definitely wasn't genetic, much less something that could be learned. That was a weird argument. Here we go. Bye.